Hello, Joe here from Infiniti of Tacoma. We have an interesting comparison for you. We're comparing a 2017 Infiniti Q60 Red Sport 400, our newest performance coupe, versus a 2013 Infiniti G37 IPL, which at the time was the highest performance version of the G37 Coupe that you could get. IPL stands for Infiniti Performance Line. It was supposed to be kind of like Infiniti's answer to maybe like an Audi S model or a BMW M model, where they take an already sporty G37 Sport Coupe and they up the ante with a little bit more sporty accessories and features. Most notably, you'll notice that this has an aerodynamic package to give it a little bit more aggressive look versus the standard G37 Sport. You have this really aggressive looking front spoiler. They add these side sills to give it a little bit of a lower stance to the ground. And the rear bumper is also a little bit more aggressive looking versus the standard G37 Sport. You also get a special exhaust system with the IPL. The Infiniti already has a pretty low restriction exhaust system on most of its products, but the IPL steps up a little bit more for just a little bit better performance sound. You also get IPL badging throughout the vehicle. Another feature on the IPL is these beautiful upgraded wheels. Normally the G37 Sport comes with 19-inch forged aluminum wheels. These are a little bit higher quality wheels versus the ones you get in the normal Sport. And it's a unique design that you only get on the IPL. The G37 is equipped with bi-Z9 headlights, which provide outstanding nighttime visibility. The Q60 is equipped with LED headlights for outstanding nighttime visibility. The IPL is equipped with that amazing award-winning VQ37 engine that we see in so many Infiniti products. In the IPL trim, it makes 348 horsepower. Normally it makes around a little over 330 horsepower in the standard G37 Sport. But with the upgraded exhaust system and some slight changes to the engine, they up the output to 348 horsepower. It's a fantastic engine, lots of power. It's naturally aspirated, so there's no turbocharging or supercharging like on the Q60. The Q60 features a new VR30 engine. We're going to find this engine first in the Q60 and the Q50. It's a brand new engine. We don't see it in any other Infiniti or Nissan models. There's two versions of this engine. There's a 300 horsepower version, and then there's a 400 horsepower version, which you get in the Red Sport model, like on this Q60. With twin turbos, it provides effortless power. It's a lot smoother than the G37's VQ37 engine. As amazing as that engine might be, it is coarser. You notice more vibrations coming through the engine into the cabin, which is not a great thing for a luxury vehicle, so that's why Infiniti changed to this new VR30 design. It also is equipped with direct injection, the latest in gasoline engine technology. The way direct injection works is it sends a highly pressurized gas directly into the combustion chamber, so generally that gives you more power, better fuel economy, and it makes less emissions. So the VR30 features some of the latest and greatest in engine technology, 400 horsepower versus 348 horsepower on the G37 IPL. With the Q60, it's a little bit different. While the IPL is a little bit easier to tell apart from a standard G37, the Q60, I think this is actually a good thing versus a bad thing. A base 4-cylinder 2.0 T version of the Q60 doesn't look radically different than the Red Sport 400, which I think definitely makes a lot of sense, because I don't think people should be penalized for getting a smaller engine. I think if Infiniti has the ability to make the car look good, it should look good in all models. So when you opt for the Red Sport 400, the differences are a lot more slight. But some giveaways are these red brake calipers. You also see this S badge, it's in red, versus the 300 horsepower version with a sport package. That S is not in red, it's just, I think it's just in the standard silver color. Then going to the exhaust tips, the Red Sport 400 has this really cool looking exhaust tip that doesn't look anywhere near it does on the other Q60 models. I've always been a fan of the G37 interior. It's very functional, easy to use, it's comfortable, but definitely by today's standards, especially when you compare it to the Q60's interior, it looks very, very dated. And really, the G37 design goes back to the 2008 model year, so really, they didn't really make drastic changes to the interior. It's virtually the same interior design that you'd find on a 2008 model, aside for some very slight differences. It's very comfortable. With the IPL model, they give you the IPL badging in the seats. Generally, when you get a sport version of the G Coupe, the G37 Coupe, they give you a little bit extra bolstering in the seats to hold you, keep you in place during performance driving. Transmissions. One big difference between a G37 and a Q60 was the available of a 6-speed manual gearbox. It is a wonderful gearbox. I'm a huge manual transmission enthusiast. This is one of my favorite ones. Sharing its platform with a Nissan 370Z, I actually think this is actually the same transmission you do get in the 370Z. I could be wrong, but I think that is the case. You could also get a 7-speed automatic transmission with steering wheel paddle shifters with the IPL or the sport version of the G37. In fact, it's the same 7-speed automatic transmission that we find today in the Q60 over there. But unfortunately, the Q60 is not available with a manual transmission. That 7-speed is amazing. I think as far as performance goes, would be pretty much the same if you could get a 6-speed gearbox with the Q60. The reason why we find manual transmissions going away is not that many people drive manual gearboxes anymore. So it costs a lot of money to develop a car, and when you have to develop two transmissions, if you have to develop an automatic transmission and a manual transmission for a car, it can be very expensive. And there just aren't enough people these days who want a manual transmission to warrant Infiniti developing one. In fact, when we sold G37 Coupes when they were new, we'd probably sell hundreds a year, but maybe only a handful, 5 or 10 a year, we sold with manual transmissions. Infotainment systems. Pretty basic on the G37 compared to the Q60. This one is equipped with a navigation package. It comes standard with the IPL. You also get a backup camera, rear parking sensors. You can connect a compatible smartphone to the infotainment system. It has an onboard hard drive where you can store up to about 3,000 of your favorite songs. The satellite radio hardware is installed, so you can get satellite radio as well with a monthly subscription. This one also comes standard with the Bose Studio and Wheel sound system. Excellent sound system, still not up to the latest and greatest of what we find in the Q60. Dual zone auto climate control. Back then, Infiniti had that traditional analog clock, but you can see it's very basic. The navigation screen and backup camera screen is a lot smaller than what you find in the Q60. One cool feature that you find in the G37 that we don't see in the Q60 anymore, I don't know why Infiniti got rid of this feature. They offered it in a lot of their vehicles, but eventually it kind of went away, is a tilt gauge cluster. The whole gauge cluster moves up and down with the steering wheel. The reason why they do that is so that the steering wheel will never obstruct the gauges. That can sometimes be an annoying thing. And with that tilt gauge cluster, that alleviates the problem. We don't find that in Infinitis anymore. Maybe it was just too expensive to implement in a vehicle and it just costed too much, and they figure people weren't that crazy about it for how much extra it would cost to include that feature in the vehicle. So maybe that's why Infiniti did away with that really cool feature. Now sitting inside the Q60, it is a huge contrast in interior design versus the G37. You can really see the G37's age as far as interior styling and features go when you get inside this Q60. You have nice leather trim throughout the interior with contrast stitching. On the center console, you have it on the dashboard, continues over to the door. The leather and seat design is a lot more modern and a lot more contoured and comfortable than what we find in the G37, which is an older design dating back to 2008. This one has this really cool carbon fiber trim throughout the interior as well, versus the aluminum trim that we find in the G37 IPL. Then the infotainment system, this has this really cool dual display system. We actually first saw this dual display system in the Q60's cousin, the Q50 sedan, which is basically the four-door version of the Q60. The top screen is for navigation and parking camera functions, while the bottom screen is like almost a tablet-like interface where you can access vehicle settings. You can make changes to the vehicle settings. You can connect your compatible smartphone to it and stream some radio stations, I believe like Pandora, iHeartRadio, stuff like that. If you also have a compatible smartphone, you can check your email. You can change vehicle settings. You can make changes to the engine, steering, suspension, active trace control. You also use the bottom screen for climate settings. This one's equipped with a heated steering wheel. And you can also use it to make changes to the vehicle settings. This one is equipped with HD radio. That's something you couldn't get in the G37. HD radio is a relatively newer form of radio. Since they opened up the wireless spectrum, radio stations are able to broadcast in HD, so it's a little bit better sound quality, almost CD quality. And they're actually able to offer more stations. Like one of my local favorite stations, 88.5, they have 2 HD stations. They have their regular one, and then they have a 24/7 jazz station. Transmissions. So as I mentioned before, you can't get a manual gearbox. The only transmission choice in the Q60 is a 7-speed automatic gearbox. It is a fantastic gearbox, and it does let you do a manual option. There's 2 ways. One way is you can bring the shifter down and to the left, and you push up to upshift and down to downshift. It provides rev match downshifts for a sportier sound and feel. They also have these steering wheel paddle shifters. You can use those to change gears as well. Suspensions. Normally when you get a G37 Sport, they give you a Sport Tune suspension package as well as a mechanical limited slip differential. But when you opt for the IPL, they actually improve the suspension even more. The Q60 is a little bit different. When you opt for the Red Sport 400 trim like on this one, they give you a dynamic digital suspension. So where the IPL has a Sport Tune suspension, it's always in sport mode. You can't change the suspension settings. It's always the same way. With the dynamic digital suspension, you can make changes to the suspension. You can tune the suspension for a more leisurely driving type of situation, or you can tune it for a sportier setting. So it reduces body roll and it really improves the handling of this Q60. Really cool stuff, and definitely a big contrast between the older technology on the G37 versus the cutting edge technology that we find on this 2017 Q60 Red Sport 400. Styling. One of the biggest reasons why people decide to buy a coupe is because they look gorgeous and they have a sporty look. So obviously styling is very important for people who are considering buying two-door coupes. And obviously the Q60 has really taken a huge departure from the styling of the G37. Well, I always admired the styling of the G37. It did have some critics, especially with this aerodynamic package, because as I mentioned before, you have this little bit more aggressive looking front air dam on the G37. A lot of reviews I read by the automotive press, they kind of were not too crazy about the styling and the body kit on it. I think it looks pretty good, but definitely when you park it next to a all-new Q60, which is a gorgeous new design, obviously the G37 is starting to show its age. You can definitely see a family resemblance in the design. The Q60's design is a different story, where the G37 was panned, especially the styling on the IPL was panned by some automotive press. I really haven't heard any negative things by anybody about the gorgeous styling of the Q60. It really is a beautiful automobile. And probably one of the hottest and stylish coupes on the market right now. So here we are in the G37 IPL Coupe. I just got finished driving the Q60 Red Sport 400. Definitely the Red Sport 400 is a lot more comfortable interior. Even though the vehicles are roughly the same size, it feels a little bit more spacious in the Q60 interior. I feel a little bit more cramped in the G37 interior. Definitely looks a lot older and dated right after being inside the Q60. But the one thing I do love is this fantastic manual gearbox. And when it comes to performance driving, for me, and probably for a lot of people who love manual transmissions, that's one of the biggest joys of driving a performance automobile, is to change your own gears. That perfect shift, perfect clutch engagement, rev match downshifts, heel towing, it really is an art form. And it's very rewarding to drive a performance car smoothly and to be able to push it hard and to experience the wonderful sounds, that tactile connection you have with the vehicle. That's one thing that's going on, that direct mechanical connection you have changing your own gears, operating the clutch. That's not an easy thing to do. I remember when I first started driving manual transmission, it was a nightmare. It seemed like impossible. I did not start off well. It was very embarrassing for a little while. The VQ37 engine sounds wonderful, but you can definitely feel the coarseness. It's nowhere near as smooth as that VR30 engine. When I rev the engine, I can feel the vibrations coming through the gear shifter. I can feel it in the steering wheel. I can feel it everywhere. And with that 7-speed automatic transmission, it's a lot easier just for highway passing. Where you have a manual gearbox, you kind of have to hunt for that right gear. You just mash in the gas with that 7-speed automatic transmission, and it automatically goes to the optimum gear ratio for that particular speed and driving condition. So for point and shoot performance, it's really hard to beat the Red Sport 400 Q60. It definitely takes a lot more skill and thought to extract the maximum performance out of this IPL with the manual gearbox. Of course, you can always get the IPL with pretty much the same 7-speed automatic gearbox that you find in the Q60. Paddle shifters, 7 speeds. And you can also tell that there's a little bit more road noise, a little bit more wind noise with the G37 versus the Q60. It's definitely not as quiet as the interior on the Q60. Cruising in the same road, 65 miles an hour, it's definitely a lot louder. But given me these scenarios, okay, you can pick any car you want. You're gonna go on a mountain back road. Let's say I'm gonna go up to Mount Rainier and just do some back road burning on those wonderful curvy smooth roads and do some serious performance driving. Even though this is not as fast as the Q60 Red Sport 400, just the fact that this has this manual gearbox, I would pick this any day. But if we're going to do a road trip, let's say I got to do a road trip from Seattle to Portland, I'd probably take the Q60. It's more comfortable, it's quieter, and it still is a lot of fun to drive. Probably, I'll probably experience a little bit less fatigue on a long road trip in the Q60 versus the G37. Even when the vehicle's idling, you can still feel the vibrations of the engine. I can feel it in the shifter. At a dead stop and idling with the VR30 engine, it is a lot smoother. You can barely even tell that the engine's running at all. Yeah, that VR30 engine definitely pulls a lot harder than the G37, even the 348 IPL version. You have a little bit more low end power, it seems, like that VR30. It seems like you have to rev this engine out a little bit more to extract the maximum performance. Handling is very nice. I love the weight of the steering. Nice steering ratio. You just only need to make small changes in the steering wheel to make direction changes. I definitely think I prefer the feel of the steering a little bit more on the Q60 with its dynamic digital suspension in the sporty setting versus the G37 IPL. It's very close. There might be personal preference, but I definitely feel a little bit more confident, inspiring in the Q60's handling. Have it in the pretty much optimum power band, and it's fast, but it doesn't have anywhere of the thrust as a 400 horsepower VR30 engine. You definitely have to work a little bit harder to get your speed in this car versus the Q60 Red Sport 400. Don't get me wrong, it's still a very, very fun car to drive. And even though it's not quite as fast as the Red Sport 400, when it comes to all-out performance driving, I'd still prefer the Q60 because of its, G37 because of its wonderful gearbox. And considering how much older it is, this basically design dates back to the 08 model year. Considering how well it holds up to the Q60, it's pretty impressive because, we know that the Q60 has a lot of advantages over this G37. But for $15,000 to $20,000, is it worth it much to you? chance to accelerate there. So if price is a big concern for you, the Q60 Red Sport 400, a new one, versus this 2013 G37 IPL that has 28,000 miles on it. You can pick one of these up for right around $30,000, give or take. A Red Sport 400 Q60, that's going to have an MSRP in the mid $50,000 range, depending on the options. So obviously that's something to take consideration. If features and specs are important for you, having the latest greatest in technology, and you can afford the extra money for a Red Sport 400, or maybe you just want to do a lease, then obviously a Q60 is a great choice. If you're a manual transmission fan, you're not thinking about leasing, you want to purchase, it's a little bit of a stretch for you to purchase a new Q60, then definitely take the G37 IPL into consideration. Even the non-IPL versions are excellent. The regular sport models you can get with manual transmission, they don't make quite as much horsepower. It's 336 versus 348 with the IPL. You still get the sport tuned suspension package with a regular sport G37. You don't have quite the fancier suspension on the IPL. So there's definitely a great selection of pre-owned G37 Coupes in the market. We have a good selection ourselves at INFINITI of Tacoma. So here we are. I guess the ultimate test of a vehicle is to get behind the wheel and drive it and see how it performs. Since I'm kind of a sporty type of guy, I'm going to set this Q60 to the sportiest setting. With the Red Sport 400, they actually give you a little bit extra of a sport setting called Sport Plus. So I'm going to put that in Sport Plus, so that automatically puts pretty much everything that's programmable into the sportiest setting. So now with this in the Sport Plus setting, the steering, the engine and transmission, the digital dynamic suspension will all be set to the sportiest settings. That digital dynamic suspension really does a great job reducing body roll, making this Q60 really stable and confident, inspiring in the corners. Very smooth. This new VR30 engine is definitely a lot smoother than the VQ37 engine. We're at a dead stop. I can hardly feel the engine running at all. I can barely hear it. It is very smooth and very quiet. But the nice thing is during normal cruising situations, the car is quiet. But when you start revving up the engine, you start doing performance driving, then you can hear some wonderful sounds from that awesome VR30 engine. As I accelerate up to the speed limit, this Q60, you can really feel that 400 horsepower engine pull from a dead stop. Effortless acceleration, very smooth. And then you notice when I got that engine revving up, it sounded absolutely spectacular. Cruising at about 60 miles an hour, nice and quiet on the interior. Very little wind and road noise. No engine noise whatsoever. But watch when I hammer on that gas, that engine comes alive, and with those 7 gears, it always has a ratio close by for the perfect driving situation. Fantastic point and shoot performance automobile. So when it comes to a situation where you feel like you want to shift your own gears, you just move the gear selector from drive to the left. Now it's in sport mode. Right now it's telling me it's in 5th gear. I can downshift to 4th. I can downshift to 3rd. But if I try downshifting to 2nd, that would break the engine. It would be very bad for the vehicle, so it won't let me. So don't worry if you get a Q60 and you want to use these steering wheel paddle shifters, or you just want to use the regular manual setting. If you don't have the paddle shifters on yours, don't worry about hurting the engine. They designed it so that won't happen. And then if you want to put it back into regular drive mode, you're done shifting yourself, you just move it back over the drive and it will take care of the shifting on its own. This particular Red Sport 400 is equipped with intelligent all-wheel drive. Which really enhances your wet weather performance. I always recommend all-wheel drive on your Infiniti if you're going to drive in the snow, or if you live in an area where you get a lot of wet, slippery weather like we do in the Pacific Northwest, and you want to enjoy your performance vehicle all year round, then get the all-wheel drive, because the wet weather performance of an all-wheel drive Q60 Red Sport 400 is going to be far superior than a rear-wheel drive version, because with 400 horsepower and you have rear-wheel drive in wet conditions, it's going to easily overwhelm those rear wheels. There just won't be enough grit in the wet conditions to put that 400 horsepower to the ground. So the traction control system is going to kick in, retarding the power, and that's going to take away from your performance. But with the intelligent all-wheel drive system, it just grips and goes. And the great thing about this intelligent all-wheel drive system is that when all-wheel drive is not needed, it operates in 100% rear-wheel drive mode. So the reason why you want to do that is because 100% rear-wheel drive power gives you the feel of a rear-wheel drive sports car. It also helps with fuel economy. It also helps with premature tire wear, which is sometimes an issue with all-wheel drive vehicles. But it's constantly monitoring driving conditions, so when the rear wheels start to slip in a matter of milliseconds, almost instantly, it can send up to 50% of the vehicle's power to the front wheels. This just feels wonderful in the corners. The direct adaptive suspension works wonderfully, even though there's bumps and road imperfections. It's not jarring, it's not beating you up, but you'll notice when you go in the corners, you'll feel very little body roll, and it just is very confidence inspiring when you get behind the wheel of this vehicle. It encourages you to maybe drive faster than you probably should be driving in some situations.